think that that question of how we feel as a function of what we give, too little or too much, or we think we give a lot and we act like we give a lot. It's as though we get more votes because we put in more money. And there's also the congregations that I've been to where they take the budget, divide it by the number of households, and then say, this is your portion. All those relationship questions are founded in the fact that money is too powerful in our sense of self given to us in the world. It's part of the commodification of money that tells us it's all about how much instead of relationship and commitment and covenant and collaboration. In my own church, we've worked a lot less with dollar figures and a lot more with percent figures. And you've seen over time the UUA information has gone toward a percentage thinking. There's a story in the New Testament that talks about the widow's mite. That's the gift of the widow who has virtually nothing, who gives her little mite a very small amount, and that it's worth more than the gifts of the kings who walk around talking about how much they've given. Here's what I suggest. We have not explored our giving in terms of our spiritual self. If we think about our giving in terms of our spiritual self, and when I use the word spiritual, I'm talking about the interior self and sense of moral development. So don't go fleeing from the room if your theology doesn't, isn't entirely at ease with that. You know that there is a way in which you know you are in balance with life and the world. And if we are doing the work, the spiritual work, to really incorporate our theology into the practice of our life, then money becomes a transitory object. And giving, and the spirit of giving, and the discipline to give even the little bit honorably becomes possible. It also means that the larger giver would humbly give, not proudly give. The spiritual work is the link we so often miss in our UU congregations because we bought the commodification of money instead of seeing it as a tool by which we learn to grow spiritually.
Data that we're seeing is that, and historically, religious contributions, the drop in contributions to religious communities lags behind the drop to other charitable or nonprofit institutions, because for people who are committed churchgoers, that is the last place that they cut their charitable giving. So the sobering news is that we may yet see more drop in our income in our churches, in our pledge income in our churches. That's the reality that we're living in. If you do not go to people who still can give more, and I think this is the time for us to help our people realize their privilege, realize how many of our people are not actually hurting financially. So for many of our people, this is the first time that they felt like maybe a little shaky ground, and it's very scary for them, but that doesn't mean that they're in danger of losing their homes. For example, many of our people are not going to lose their homes. They might have to cut back on their travel. And so you need to have the courage to go directly to those people and say, look, we need you. We need you now more than we've ever needed you before, and we need you to increase your pledge in order to maintain the health and well-being of this church during this economic situation. The churches, I spoke with the Reverend Dr. Leon Hopper, a great retired colleague of ours. Some of you may remember Leon, and he lives in the Seattle area, and I asked him, how did the churches survive the Depression? And he said, well, many of them didn't. He actually wasn't really working during the Depression, but he's heard the stories. He's a good historian. He said they didn't. A lot of them didn't. The churches that survived the Depression were those that were clear about their service to the wider community, clear about their mission, and their people were very clear about their commitment. So that's, if we will see churches closing if we don't address this very explicitly, this need for our people to meet this new challenge. So that's my answer for you.
All right. We do a pledge drive every year, but we do not ask those who join to contribute to pledge until next year. Stop that. Stop it. Make it a condition of becoming a member to make a pledge and fulfill it, to go through an orientation, a comprehensive orientation, and to support the mission. Oh, that was weak. Support the mission. All right, if a person cannot affirm the mission of the church, their signature ought not to go on that book. Now, how should we address the member who cuts back on their pledge because they're unhappy with something? The consumerist mentality. All right, one of the biggest things we have to change in our culture is this. I don't like the minister. I'm cutting back on my pledge. People actually put this on their pledge forms. They don't understand what it says about them. I only give when it benefits or pleases me. Yeah, here's your money back is the thing I want to say to him. You obviously are not one with the mission of the church. It's troublesome to you. So I think you better take this pledge back and wait to see if there's a moment in time where you can be one with us in this work that we have. Now, I can do that. I don't think many of you can do it quite as easily, but I can sit and take the 45 minutes to have the pastoral call, because the fact of the matter is this person is ill. They have a spiritual sickness about money. And that's something that I want to say. I'm going to take a minute to talk about spiritual sickness and money.
You preach it.
All right. Am I on? No. I am now? Okay. All right. This work is ministry, okay? This work is ministry. I'm sorry you didn't know that when you got into it, but you're in it now, and it's ministry, and we need you. You and I have got to hold that 25-year vision, even if you and I may not be here at the end of 25 years. We've got to go out in our congregations and find people who can spot the sickness and not judge people for it, but meet them like the casserole brigade does the ill people. The same spirit. And we got to get over thinking that stewardship is about technique when it's really about facilitating giving and generosity. Giving without an expectation of return. Giving to future generations. Standing in the living tradition. That's what it means. Ours is a tradition that lives. We don't give to ourselves. We give to the future of our faith and its significance in the world to speak a word of hope and joy and justice. Okay, that was a sermon, and I'm sorry.